Hello, everyone. We'll kind of go through the intros here, just kind of, uh, you know, let you know a little bit about myself and Christine. And by the time our intros are done, I would suppose, that'd probably be good enough time to start on this and give everybody kind of a chance to roll in here. Um, so, a little bit about myself. I actually uh, I grew up kind of down in southern Minnesota. Wanted to get out of the area, went into the Navy Reserve. So happy Veterans Day to all of you other fellow veterans out there. And I was in IT in the Navy Reserve, studied business admin, marketing, history, uh, and mass comm. I got out of college with 183 credits as a bachelor's degree. So really prepared myself to potentially go on Jeopardy is about all I did. And pretty avid softball player. But Christine and I actually got to know each other. It was over coffee, wasn't it, Christine?
It was. It was at a 6:30 a.m. coffee EDU in Atlantic City. Can't make that up.
Yeah, that was a great time. It was a nice idea to have like a little VR meetup. I was still kind of getting my bearings a little bit under me at that point in my sales career at Bytes, and uh, it was a great project to work on. So, do you maybe want to talk a little bit about the project we worked on together and a little bit about your background and kind of get things started on that?
Sure. So I'm Christine Lyon Bailey. I am a director of technology and innovation, as well as an elementary principal in a K-8 school district in New Jersey. And I am also the chief strategy officer of Ready Learner One, which is a PD providing company based out of New York. We do a lot of work with Bytespeed and with Grant and his team. As Grant said, him and I met, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago now, I think, at a tech conference here in New Jersey. And didn't know anything about virtual reality at the time. And I happened to join this coffee EDU because someone I knew was going to be there. And I ended up talking to Grant for the majority of the time. We were talking about VR. And while I know he's a sales manager, so it's his job, no pun intended, he sold me on the idea of bringing VR into our schools. So fast forward about 6 months, we brought 3 Bytespeed setups into our schools. So we did the Bytespeed PCs along with HTC Vive headsets. And we started finding ways to integrate the VR meaningfully into our instruction. And we'll talk more about that later in the presentation. But then we had the privilege of partnering with another partner of Bytespeed's, Zennial Digital, and they were doing some refinement of some of their virtual labs that they offer through VR. And a group of our students were actually able to work with their developers to provide iterative feedback on the development of their products and actually work in tandem with another district in New Jersey, the development team in, I believe they were out of Columbia, Bytespeed in North Dakota, and Zennial's headquarters and CFO out of Miami, Florida, to do this amazing project. So it was just the beginning of my passion for VR and how we can use VR to connect with each other. I always said in a distant world, and it meant a lot before COVID, but now it means even more in our socially distanced world. So we could talk a little bit about that later on in the presentation.
Sure. I'm going to get started here. And, I kind of do things a little bit different. I know compared to some other folks on these webinars, I like to allow people to actually talk and contribute during these webinars. I want them to be engaging. Let's just be honest, PowerPoints are every bit as boring over a webinar as they are in person. So I want to try to make these things a little bit more lively and participative. Feel free to raise your hands or drop questions in the Q&A, and I'd be more than happy to take some take a couple peeks at it. So, yeah, with that being said, we're going to get rolling. And let me get over to the next slide here. We already kind of did the intros a little bit here, but just kind of a quick thing. Feel free to, I'm going to do this here in the polls. Um, have you ever used VR? Um, so, all right. So, um, in progress. Feel free to, drop it in there. We're not gonna judge you or anything like that. Um, so looks like by and large, most of you have tried some sort of VR. Um, so with that being said, you know, feel free to kind of shout out or anything like that. What you've been using, like what type of VR have you used? Uh, I know myself personally, I use quite a few different ones. I'd say personally, my favorite ones are probably the HTC Vive or like the Vive Cosmos. Oculus Rift are, um, I like those quite a bit too, or the Rift S. Do you have any personal favorites, Christine?
So I am a big fan of our Bytes that we have in our school, but for educational use, but for personal use, I love my Quest.
All right. So uh, the other thing is like, how did you use it? There's a lot of different ways to use it. And these are all kind of questions like that you should be thinking about too when you're looking at putting VR into your school. How much VR has actually been used inside of your classroom or inside of your school? What has been used and how are they using it? Um, this next thing here, this is just a quick little video about VR and how it's a world-class teaching tool.
Being immersed in what you're learning motivates you to fully do this. If I were submersed in a world that, I'm supposed to do something from because I'm a part of that world now, I would be more inclined to understand what I'm learning or what I need to learn. And I think it would be a whole new ballpark. I think someone would look to VR in the learning environment as it's a detention learning. We use those textbooks and write down notes and we type them on the test. And that's pretty much what everything being involved in what you're learning. Physically being able to walk through it and, have everything involved through it.
Grant, it's really difficult to hear the video.
And so that can bring out a new level of, type of student. It can just make them all the more rounded and amazing. So
I think it's a good way of bridging the sort of disconnect between what we're taught in school and what is actually there.
It would be something I really need to have in the classroom. I'm a really visual learner, so it helps me to be able to see things and pick it up and hold it. And I think that would be really effective in learning, especially for like younger children.
I think just being in an actual scenario rather than just hearing about it is a much more valuable way to learn things. For like history lessons, battle of so and so, they could go into a VR situation and like experience that for their own selves, and they can see historical events unfold.
The tilt brush was amazing in the sense that I was interacting with my own imagination. And I think for children, especially children, that can be huge in developing creativity, aspects that are lacking in the classroom.
You get a lot more kids that don't like learning because they think it's not fun and it's boring, to actually want to learn and be able to have fun while learning.
If you're interested in how to draw, if you wanted to learn how to do coding or anything, you could learn them through VR, and you could also learn business and communication skills and game development skills through actually creating the programs within VR, which I think is pretty cool. There's two ends to it. Possibly one of the most surreal things I've ever done. It's really weird being in a room and then putting on a headset that makes you feel like you're underwater or on a ship or cooking in a kitchen or doing anything. It's really cool how it can change like the way you feel like the moment you put it on.
It made me feel like a kid in the sandbox again. Like it made me feel a feeling that I felt since I was a little girl. Being in the VR world, the first thing that came to my head after I got out, I actually laid on the floor and I just had to like look up. I was literally floored by how therapeutic it was. I don't know, and someone who has anxiety, and I could see it being a cool like safe space for students who are either having a really hard time or need to like go and kind of disengage for a little. I think it's a really like good way to calm students if they need that kind of safe space. That'd be pretty cool. Now that I know that this is on the doorstep of education and gaming, even I don't know if I can ever go back. The possibilities are endless now that I've experienced it.
All right.
Being immersed.
I just saw some notes here. Is did the sound kind of get a little bit better there as I tried to adjust it when I saw that note come in, but
Yes, it got better.
okay, perfect. All right, so a lot of good ideas in there. Did you see any apps in there, Christine, that you use in your school or?
Yeah, I mean, do you want me to start talking a little bit about some of the different tools that we use and how we engage them, or you want me to wait until a little later in the presentation?
I think this would be a great time for you to talk about some of that.
Yeah, sure. So some of the things that we have been using with our students over the past few years that we've had the Vibes so in our district, we're huge proponents of students as creators of content. Shameless plug, I wrote a book called Reality Bytes with two co-authors, Mega Shippey and Jesse Levinsky. And it's all about using AR and VR in the classroom. And the reason why I bring it up is because a big piece of the book is a framework that we developed for the adoption of these technologies. And that framework is absorbing content, so consuming, blending, manipulating the content, and then creating new content. So it's the ABC framework: absorb, blend, create. And the reason why I mention that is because in my district, we are really focused on having students as creators of content or producers of content. There's definitely value in absorbing or consuming content, but we see the true expression of learning coming through creating. So some of the platforms that we use with our Vibes specifically is, thanks, Grant, he just dropped the link for the book in there. And actually shout out to Shannon Putman, who's actually joining us today. She has a cameo in the book. So ironically, she's one of our attendees today, and she is actually part of the book. So thank you, Shannon. So anyway, as I was saying, our students, one of the examples that I can give you is we use Tilt Brush. And what we do is Tilt Brush, for those of you that aren't familiar, it's kind of like a blank canvas. It's Google Tilt Brush, and your hand becomes your brush, and you have a palette, and you have all different types of paints and brush strokes and things like that. So imagine being a language arts teacher and doing a unit on poetry. And a lot of times poetry is a very expressive training. And so we have students actually create art that aligns with the poetry. So picture you're reading a poem, and as the poem is being read to you, you're watching this piece of art being created that kind of flows with the wording of the poem. So that's just one example of a project that we do with Tilt Brush. We use Google Blocks a lot. we do a sustainability project with Google Blocks that I can talk about in a little bit. And then we do other things like using Google Earth to engage math students. So we take Google Earth and we bring them into the middle of Chicago maybe, and we have them measure the heights of buildings in comparison to the length of a city block. And they do ratios and all sorts of math type things. I'm a former history teacher, so I'm not going to pretend to know math very well, but they do fancy math things through Google Earth. So there's a lot of really great different tools and resources out there that you can use with students through different VR platforms.
So we're going to dive in here a little bit. We're going to do a little bit of a basic overview of VR devices. Talk about what's commonly used in schools, how to choose your device, what is needed to support your device, and what resources can you use with this device. So, without further ado, it's kind of a couple different types. One of the real basic ones is, standalone headset. Those kind of range from like the extremely basic on up to some pretty cool experiences. So you have, this kind of encapsulates everything from class VR up to like the Oculus Quest. They go up from like class VR is not as engaging as say like an Oculus Quest, but it does have a better price tag. It's used for certain case uses, and the Oculus Quest can be used in certain case uses where class VR isn't. So there's a headset for all seasons, if you will. Next one is tethered or wired devices. Those are going to be offering something along the lines of from a pretty cool experience to a truly immersive VR experience. These kind of range, PlayStation VR on up to like the HTC Vive Pro. These are definitely going to be more expensive, say than, like a regular standalone headset. If you were to do like a VR spectrum of good, better, best, the standalone headsets usually range from good to better, whereas like these tethered headsets range from better to best. You engage less users with the tethered headset, but you also get much better interactivity with whoever's inside the headset and the application. So that's kind of the trade-off that you run into. So with that,
I just share something really quickly.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So in the lab that we designed in our middle school building, we have Vives, so they're tethered. And what we did is we created sort of like bays, if you can imagine. So there's the PC and the towers and the headset, and then we have a 65-inch television monitor on the wall, so that when students are immersed in the experience, their peers who are waiting their turn for the hardware are still able to see what the peer in the headset is seeing. And that has proven to be a really effective way of engaging, an entire class of 15 to 25 students when we only actually have 3 headsets in the lab. So just a little helpful tip if you're looking to find ways to engage a whole class but can't afford a whole class worth of headsets.
Sure. So, what's commonly used in classrooms? Christine mentioned what's pretty commonly used in her classroom. But by and large, I think that the higher numbers are going to skew towards, the class VR type headsets, the standalone units. They're definitely a little bit cheaper, and you can use them in like a one-to-one setting. Almost in some classrooms. I kind of look at them as like a modern movie day, which is good and bad, because these standalone units a lot of times we're going to put every single kid through the same experience at the same time. Okay, you could do that with a single screen. You wouldn't need to have 30 individual screens. Um, but it does offer a higher degree of immersion than what a movie would do. So that's kind of where the teaching comes into it, as far as we're getting these kids immersed further into the topic, or they're getting a little bit more involved with it, or they're getting more excited about it. Wired devices are very common also. You heard Christine just mention that she has those at her school. There's quite a few other schools that I've worked with. I see Bill Turner's on here from Troy. He's got some at his school, and I'm pretty sure he's pretty excited about getting another one. I don't know if it's going to be for his house or for him or for the school next, but so wired devices, more interactive and immersive. They're also becoming more affordable. You've seen some price drops, especially on the consumer end of the market. Some of the more commercial ones, like HTC, generally is geared towards commercial applications a little bit more than Oculus. So let's get into the next question here.
Grant, hang on one sec. I just wanted to add, so one of my co-authors, Micah Shippey, he is a classroom social studies teacher, and he has a class set of Oculus Go's, which is a standalone device, not tethered, not wired. And while Grant made the analogy to like a mobile movie theater of sorts, one of the really powerful learning experiences that his students have experienced with the Go is he teaches the Holocaust. And so he takes them through the Anne Frank experience, which actually allows you to tour a recreation of the house that Anne Frank hid in during the Holocaust. And it's really, really powerful when you can put that headset on yourself and walk up the stairs and enter into the room, and you get a sense for what the size of the space was and the claustrophobic nature of it. And it's really so much more powerful than being able to just pull up a video from YouTube or Discovery Ed, which is an amazing resource, don't get me wrong, but just totally different learning experience than immersing yourself literally in the shoes of Anne Frank. So different, just as powerful and meaningful of a learning experience, just a totally different style of adoption, if you will.
Sure. I'm going to put another poll up here. The reason being is a lot of you have said that you've used VR at some point in the past. I don't know whether that means that you have it in your school district or where you're using it. But if you have this in your school district, it'd be great to hear your feedback on this question. So I'm going to do this now. Do you feel that your school district could use VR differently to make a bigger impact on your students? So I'm going to tuck that away. Feel free to answer that. So choosing your device, what age group will use the device? Are they younger or older students? Who will be teaching with it? How tech savvy is this person that's going to be teaching with it? What subjects will you teach with it? Science, geography. What is the size of the class? 10, 15, 20 plus students. What teaching tools are in the classroom already? Do you have like an interactive flat panel? You got some real beefy desktops in there already, maybe a 3D printer. And what is the goal of using VR? Is it individualized or like a one-to-one type of classroom? Christine, when you were looking at selecting, your VR hardware for your school, what are some of the most important things that you consider?
So one of the most important things was we needed our students to be able to produce or create artifacts of learning through the hardware. So we were not interested in hardware that would only allow for the consumption. Now, consumption is really important. Don't get me wrong. The Anne Frank experience is a perfect example of why it's important, but we wanted to be able to multitask with the equipment that we had. So that was probably first and foremost in terms of what we were looking for. And then The second thing that probably drove our decision was making sure that we were purchasing something that would allow us to use all of the experiences that we wanted to use. I had done a tremendous amount of research on different experiences and apps that could be used in VR that would support our curriculum across all the content areas. We didn't want it to exist only in one class. So that was a big piece of the puzzle as well.
Perfect. So this is a cool little video here. I like to show it because it shows kind of a, if you haven't used Tilt Brush, it's a great video, or it's a great app. There's a lot of great tie-ins as far as ways that you can use Tilt Brush with some other cool equipment. And I'll go into that here after the video. So that's Tilt Brush. Tilt Brush is a pretty amazing app. And there's a lot of really great tie-ins. So if you're in, like, say, a CTE or Makerspace lab, it's pretty easy to see the connection that can be done there. Or same thing with an art class. But things that aren't exactly so obvious as far as how you can tie it in with some of your existing hardware in your school. So you can actually export your painting files from Tilt Brush. So, you saw the folks dancing around with their paintbrush, making some pretty cool paintings. Essentially what Tilt Brush does is while you're painting it, it kind of turns it into like a 3D rendering, and it'll save it as an OBJ file. And if you're familiar with OBJ files, that means that you can print them on a 3D printer. There's a lot of other cool ways that you can use Tilt Brush in a makerspace environment. But let's go into what is needed to support these devices that can offer experiences like Tilt Brush. So for a wired device, you may be able to get by with some corner cutting on the below specs, but just know that you will impact the quality of the experience if you do. So I'm going to focus on entry point hardware that still offers good performance. I don't like going too bare bones, especially on something like this, because it is an expensive investment and you're more than likely hoping to get more than 1 or 2 years out of it. So I'm going to stay agnostic on the type of hardware that's used. I certainly have my preferences, and if you want to know why, we can talk about that at another point. But certain hardware does have advantages that makes them more ideal for a K-12 environment in certain circumstances. But one thing on these VR headsets here that I really want to touch on, you need to have a good relationship with your IT director or just your IT staff in general. Reason being is a lot of these headsets and stuff are going to run off of programs like Steam, or you might need to use a login with like a company like a Facebook account or things like that to get up and running. So those are definitely things to consider, but all of that can be solved if you have a good relationship with your IT director and can figure out a way to come to some creative resolutions on that. So what is needed to support your device? Well, you need a good motherboard. Most motherboards nowadays come with the USB 3s and things like that on there. So I don't really see this being a particular barrier for anybody. You don't need a state-of-the-art gaming motherboard. We've done a lot of builds using pretty standard motherboards. So Another thing that you need is some decent RAM. You only need 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM to get you going. But I would recommend to get to 16 gigs if you can, um, especially if the machines are going to be used for other things like your CAD lab or doing video rendering or actually creating VR content as well. You're going to be happy that you have that extra RAM. Um, let's see here. Next one, you're going to need a good CPU. It doesn't have to be anything real fancy. The newer i3 processors are more than capable of running any type of VR apps. Like a i3 or the Ryzen 3 processors. Higher frequency on the RAM or on the CPU is better. Additional core count doesn't hurt either, but it doesn't make as big of an impact as having a higher base frequency. You want to have a good power supply unit. You're going to be running these with a pretty decent sized graphics card. So you want to have a good power supply unit in your machine. The other thing too is it's a good investment to make for the long run, especially if you're the type that likes to swap out your video cards every once in a while. This will work on Windows 10, Windows 7. You'll need some good storage. When we do our builds, like if a customer is buying a new machine from us, I always recommend 500 gigs at least. Just like a 500 gigs solid state drive or M.2 drive. If you want anything more, a 250 meg or 250 gig M.2 plus a 1 terabyte hard disk drive isn't a bad combo either. Good graphics cards. You don't have to go overboard here. Most of the ones that I've put down here as examples are going to be between like the $150 to $200 price range. But any questions at all on any of this right now? All right. Christine earlier touched on some, doing something new in her district. And that's kind of what this video is about. It's about opening up, to a whole new world of virtual reality to your students. It's a new way of thinking, new way of learning. What do you think's been the biggest surprise to you with how engaged your students have become, or is it something else that you've noticed, Christine, with after you added VR to your school district?
Yeah, I think students are just more engaged, right? It's this amazing way of hands-on learning that you can't create without it. Like, for example, having students do a sustainability project in Japan. You're not taking a group of middle schoolers from New Jersey to Japan to do a topographical study, but you can fly them right in through Google Earth. And so it's amazing when you introduce VR into your learning environment, you're seeing the learning through a totally new lens. And that is what the something new becomes. It's this whole new perspective of their learning. It's incredible.
Nice. Well, I'm going to share this. This is a kind of a funny video. It's one of my favorite VR videos that I share when I do my presentations. So enjoy.
Brings me round and get to find And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time. And I think it's gonna be a long, long time.
Yeah, so question, what is that video called? It's actually a commercial that Samsung did for the Gear. I can't remember what the exact title of the commercial is, but if you type in like Samsung ostrich or something like that, I'm pretty sure it will pop up right away.
Okay.
So
Can I share something that kind of falls in alignment with this video? Not necessarily flying ostriches, however. So you were talking about tilt brush a few minutes ago, and it reminded me of something we achieved with VR that would be otherwise unachievable. So one of the things that we struggled with as a school, and I think this is pretty much a global struggle, is we've integrated majority of our special needs students back into our district. It's a beautiful thing to keep them with their peers and with their community. And we've developed all of these really great multiple disabilities classrooms to serve their instructional and educational and social and emotional needs. But the one thing that we just were so challenged with was our students who are nonverbal in nature and or become nonverbal in moments of frustration. We didn't have an effective way of allowing them to express themselves when they were meeting moments of frustration in the school day. And so what we did is we noticed that the easiest way for them to communicate was through art. And it doesn't need to be, you know, like a Picasso, but just the idea of using color and shapes to express emotions. So we started using tilt brush in order to do that. And providing them with this immersive palette where they could express their emotions through art. And once they sort of were able to get to a place where they felt that they had been able to express themselves, then the counselor or the case manager or the instructional aide, whoever the adult was that was working with the child, was able to then view that art and sort of use that as a portal into understanding how that child was feeling at the time. So it truly was like achieving the unimaginable when it came to communicating, and students who typically we wouldn't be able to de-escalate and may have needed to be sent home or their whole school day was thrown off at that point, were now returning to the classroom and re-engaging in their learning. So that's just a really powerful use of that tool, falling in alignment with the idea of reimagining and doing something new.
Kind of off that same grain, I want to piggyback on kind of what you just brought up. I remember you telling me something about how I think it was your English teacher at one of your schools, like one of your middle school English teachers that was using a VR app called the Blue.
Yes, for descriptive language. Oh, it's one of my favorites. So our 7th grade language arts teacher was struggling with having her students use descriptive language to establish setting in their writing. So she came up with this idea that she needed to put the children in a setting they weren't familiar with and have them explain it, and then coach them on how to use descriptive language to explain what they were experiencing. So we brought them down to the lab and they worked in groups of 3. And so student A would put the headset on and student B and C were standing, you know, adjacent, and they were watching on the television monitor so they could see what the child in the headset was seeing. And they engaged in the Blue, which is an underwater experience. So you're literally like under the sea in the ocean's ecosystem with jellyfish pods swimming by and sea turtles and coral reefs. And I mean, it's really majestic in nature. And so the student in the headset would describe their surroundings. and the children who were following along and viewing it on the monitor would provide feedback. So for example, oh, there's a group of jellyfish swimming by me. Well, what color are they? What shapes are they? If you were to touch them, what would they feel like? And really absorbing and articulating what, using descriptive language, what they were experiencing. And then the students took that experience, went back to their classroom and infused that same type of descriptive language into their writing. And it was really powerful. It completely shifted the way that the students were approaching describing their setting and their stories.
Wonderful. I like that story quite a bit too. That one always sticks out for me. I'm going to transition here into esports. You know, Christine, your pen is still, I think, still on fire from another book that you guys might be working on. Is that correct?
Yes, it's coming out hopefully in a few weeks. We are releasing the Esports Education Playbook. And we engaged with 2 esports experts that started a league for middle school students. And it's a how-to guide on how to set up a program. What do you need from equipment to coaching to community support? And how do we make sure that we're leveraging esports to engage students in social and emotional learning, social and emotional wellness, building community and camaraderie, and really empowering positive gaming for children.
Nice. Tiffany, I had a question here from Tiffany Barnett. What is the app called for public speaking? Measures how many ums and likes they use. There's a few different ones out there. The one that I actually like the best, that thing would be blowing up with me today. So the one I like the best is Ovation VR. I know there's quite a few other ones that are out there on the market, but Ovation VR has been the one that I like the best, that I've actually had a chance to try. Ovation has some built-in eye tracking and things like that in it as well, so you can make sure you're giving a certain amount of time to certain parts of the room. It actually monitors your pace of your speech. It's a pretty powerful tool, and it kind of blows me away. I've worked with Jeff over at Ovation VR, the guy that started the company. He was at Texpo with me out in New Jersey, and yeah. So high school esports, food for thought. Colleges are handing out esports scholarships at a rapidly growing rate. I bet there are kids in your school that would like money for college. And these colleges are in your backyard, around the country, and they're international. It's a lot cheaper to operate an esports team than basketball. And there's a pretty high amount of scholarships available per player, just like there is in basketball or football or any other sport. It uses the same amount of players as basketball, and the players can be any gender. So you could have a team of 5 be 3 girls, 2 boys, or vice versa, or any gender in between. It brings together kids from all different walks. You're going to see, if you look at a team that's competitive in the high school, you're going to see guys that look like they could be the left tackle on the football team, and then might have someone that looks like they could be part of the theater program, and then someone that's the star of the school play, or you're going to see people from all different walks of life and all different types of physical abilities in there as well. That's one thing that I like about it, is how inclusive it is as a sport. Me personally, in high school, I was a 4-sport athlete. I played 4 different sports in high school, and I would have liked to have seen esports in there, because that's what I was doing when I was at home. So this is the other thing that's pretty nice, is it helps students socialize, because video games can be a solitary type activity, but it doesn't have to be. The other thing too is it can help grow your STEM interests in your school, especially if they're utilizing the lab that your STEM program is in after school. You might be getting some new kids into the area. You're going to foster student relationships, like as an educator. If you're involved in the coaching side of things, you're going to get exposed to the kids in a new way, in terms of your relationship with them. So develop schools and or skills in problem solving, teamwork, and sportsmanship. That's what the kids are going to pick up on this. They're going to have to work as part of a team. They're going to have to solve some problems together, and they're going to have to be good sports about it, or they're going to have to talk with the coach about it. So this is just going to be a quick hitter here on esports, and this kind of just talks about like how fast things are changing within the esports space and how things are like going and what direction they're heading in. So
Esports. We love to play. Since the 1980s, video games and competitive gameplay have been part of our Western culture. The video arcade, the Atari, Nintendo, PlayStation, even PC gaming, all part of this rich cultural lineage of play. We play ourselves, we watch, we even compete. What makes an esport? Well, any individual or team game that can be played on a level playing field in competition, whether that's live or online. While there are half a dozen top-tier esports, more than 100 different titles are being played competitively around the world. Esports break all boundaries. They're played by men and women across cultures and can be played on consoles, PCs, and even mobile devices. Esports are truly a world sport. Over the last decade, we've seen interest, broadcasting, and live events eclipse those of their traditional sport counterparts. Esports are a massive draw. We love to watch them live, and we love to watch them streaming. For people under 30, video games are the most popular media industry in the world, more popular than television, music, or movies. But competitive video game play is not just something we do, it's something we watch. In 2016, more people watched the League of Legends Championships than the World Series, the NBA Championships, or the Stanley Cup.
So I want to pause this right here. So if you can see League of Legends and Dota 2, those are just two esports titles that are popular. And if you heard them say earlier in the video, there's over 100 titles being played competitively. So just these two sports right here have more viewers than all these major sporting events. So this is something to know.
Playoffs. That makes the top 3 sporting events in the world the World Cup, the Super Bowl, and a video game competition. Esports are the sport of the rising generation. Talented players, broadcasters, and managers are filling every level from professional, now to collegiate, high school, and even Pee-wee. To many, esports is the biggest world they've never heard of. But to millennials, it's the future of competition, of broadcasting, and of sport. But not the distant future, the future of today. This is esports.
Just want to touch this real quick. If you have any questions at all about, okay, we're looking to get into esports, we're looking to join leagues, that kind of thing. These are just some that I threw together here. But if you want to find out more about something that's more relevant to your specific state or things like that, definitely feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to connect with you about what things are available in your state. As far as what you need for esports, you're going to need a PC that's going to be capable of running VR, essentially. If you have VR in your district and you already had everything you need for esports, or have a machine that's capable of esports, if you're buying machines for programs like CTE or CAD or photo editing, you can spend just a little bit extra and you can make your machines esports and VR capable. It really depends on the titles you're going to play. I'm not going to spend too much time on the specs because I kind of already went over them with the virtual reality portion of it. But Christine, you want to talk a little bit about what schools might need when they're starting an esports program?
Yeah, sure. I would love to. So the first thing you need is buy-in from your community, because you really need your parent population to understand that esports is different than the gaming that they are traditionally used to seeing their children engage in. And I just want to tell a super quick little story that actually happened today. As I was leaving the building, I was talking to a parent and she was not complaining, that's not the right word. She was venting about how her son, all he does is play games. And he's gaming all the time. And, it's not healthy, and he's not, it's infringing on his ability to communicate with the family, and, just a whole bunch of different things. And I said to her, I'm like, it's funny because a lot of parents resist esports, but what esports does is it really teaches students to focus on the social and emotional skills that esports can foster. It's just that a lot of kids, when they are gaming, they're gaming alone and they don't have an adult that's guiding them or coaching them through all the learning experience that are associated with gaming. So getting that buy-in from your community and your parents and getting them to understand the skills that can be taught through esports, the career paths that exist through esports. It's not just about the kids that are playing the game. There's so many other jobs associated with an esports team, from the shoutcaster to the tech people to the strategy folks. There's a role for every type of student on an esports program. Certainly you need funding, which, you can, there's a lot of different ways to approach it, from grants to outside organizations to Board of Education funding and beyond, which I know Grant can talk a little bit about. And then really getting to know your students and what are they playing? What are they interested in? And how can you recruit them? How do you build a culture in your district that celebrates these students and celebrates their accomplishments? When the football team wins the playoffs, it's like the whole town goes crazy. So how do we mimic that same type of celebratory existence for our esports teams? And shameless plug, we address all of that in the Esports for Education playbook, which will be coming out later this month.
Well, yes, and I'm looking forward to reading the entire book. So what do you need for esports? We just covered that. The other thing that you need a space. You need a place to put all these machines and all these kids that are going to be gaming. In the school district, this could be your computer lab, STEM lab, CTE lab, library, or some other space in your district that you've been trying to figure out how to use. Teams vary in size from 3 to 6. The 3 and 5 are the most common in high school sports, and there's often a varsity and a JV team. So you might have like a varsity Rocket League and then like a junior varsity Rocket League. So those are the main ones. And this is kind of what I really want to touch on. I love this video because it kind of points out, okay, this is what you can gain from building out a esports club. Story is about a teacher that down in Des Moines, Iowa, that started up an esports club and talks about the impact that it has on their students. The students talk about the impact it's had on them. Definitely a great watch. There we go.
I am a science teacher at East High School in Des Moines, Iowa. Physics. When I was in high school, I had a group of friends and we started networking our computers. I have fond memories of LAN parties and getting together and then smoking and laughing with friends as they know you with rockets. I wanted to find something that got together like my LAN parties did. My video, I made it be posted on the Des Moines Public Schools homepage. I think I would give this much attention. I love it, like, I'm good lucky too, and fucking I didn't know we played music for like it's on the intercom. One roll their eyes and say, "Oh, what is this video game club?" That being said, they all support it. They understand that video games, especially in our a lot of graduating from the high school in this part of the life. I wanted to embrace both motivating factors of schoolwork and having fun with friends. Last I thought video games bad schoolwork, and I'm that narrative with this club.
You have someone on your team who's terrible. Do not insult me. I have feelings. I get sad when I'm told I'm a noob and I die in the race.
As a friend, I am organizing these events. We actually started out with like 8 people in the beginning at the house, and then 13, 20, 25, and I'm pretty sure there's 50 as we speak. So really excited.
I thought you meant for share a lot was like fun and connected. Do a couple of fun in different places.
Have students that did start off with us and actually come to their first school meeting party.
I told Mr. Week that I was really excited to do a land party in 10th grade, and they were kind of good. This club like motivated me for I knew that I had to come in.
I really agree. So for the past month and a half, I've been staying after school.
You can see the joy in their faces. They've been in my room for the last month, working after school.
Good job. Make sure I'm doing good. And for me to let him down after he's done so much for us, something I feel embarrassed to say.
I like to play, and I like to destroy my with Fiora old for, kill them all with my card list. But for my actual hard buys, it's when they come in, they have an unstoppable smile on their face. They're going to tell me, I have passed a grade now, and I've got it.
Pretty cool. That's one of my faves. But so, what's an esports space look like? You saw what theirs look like. Bill Turner, that was on here on it earlier. This is the esports space that I just helped him out with. You can see down here, like we did some customization on the machines where we put their school logo on it. Helped them with get some chairs and things like that matched up with the school logo, and put all these different, glowing lights and everything like that inside the cases. So customization services is something that we offer. I'm going to show that real quick here. We can put your school logo on the case like this, the LED lights, liquid cooling, etc. We can point you in the direction for jerseys, things like that, but it's something that we don't build ourselves. So what do these machines cost? Entry-level VR and esports machines, you can get some for under $1,000. But let's just be honest, they're going to become obsolete much faster. You're going to maybe only get about 1 to 2 years out of that machine at best if you're spending that kind of money on it. If you want to get more time out of it, a mid-level build option is going to be your best bet, and those can be done for under $1,200. They're usually going to be right around that $1,100, $1,200 range. They can offer you a good combination of price and performance. And then you have like high-level builds for VR and esports are going to likely be priced between $1,500 and $2,000 per unit. They can offer some incredibly impressive performance and also a lot of longevity, where you can use those machines for 5, 6 years even. Us personally, Bytespeed, give us a chance to be a resource, and let's discuss esports and VR goals. Christine is also an incredible resource. Give her a chance. Give Ready Learner 1 a chance to be your resource, and let's discuss your esports and VR goals. There's a lot of funding resources available out there for esports or VR. There's a lot of good grant opportunities. If you want to stake some of that out, we have some listed on our Bytespeed website underneath the VR side of things. But this is my contact info here. If you have any questions or anything like that, definitely feel free to drop them in here right now, and be great to chat with you about those.
that awkward moment where we wait for questions.
All right. Well, since we don't have any questions here, I was hoping to keep this under an hour. It looks like we went a little long, but Christine, anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope you take the leap into the VR, esports, anything that's innovative world. And I'm always happy to serve as a resource, so feel free to reach out. And I hope to see you all again soon.
Yeah, Christine, would you want to maybe drop your contact information that you'd like to share in the chat?
Sure, I'll do that right now.
I'm going to put mine in there as well. Well, everyone have a great rest of your day, and hope you come back to check out some more of these Bytespeed webinars. Take care.
And happy Veterans Day to anyone who served. Thank you for your service.